finalmente come questa, nella quale abbiamo tutti un po' più caldo. Ci fa veramente piacere essere qua oggi con Nordlinger, che presenta in italiano senza nessun problema, perché in realtà, anche il suo discorso sarà in inglese, Jay parla italiano benissimo, per questioni di studio, ma anche per vicende professionali che vi illustrerò in un minuto. Jay è Senior Editor del National Review. National Review è un'importante pubblicazione del conservatorismo americano, giornale fondato da Bill Buckley negli anni 50, ha svolto un ruolo fondamentale nell'attrezzare un'opzione culturale alternativa a quella anche negli Stati Uniti egemone di parte democratica, di parte liberal e minoritaria italiana. È Book Fellow del National Review Institute, che non so bene cosa voglia dire, però mi sembra un titolo meraviglioso. Ma oltre a questo, è anche musicale, uno dei più raffinati periodici americani, che è il New Criterion. Bellissimo giornale fondato da Hilton Trainer, bellissima rivista fondata da Hilton Trainer e oggi diretta da Nordlinger, che è uno delle pubblicazioni davvero dei periodici più colti nei quali possiate imbattere. Per il Criterion, Jay scrive tutti i mesi la sua cronaca musicale newyorkese, musicale New York, non sapete, qualcosa di leggermente spettacolare, e anche questo ovviamente col tempo lo ha molto aiutato a sviluppare notevole familiarità con la nostra lingua. Dal 2002 Jay tutti gli anni fa una serie di interviste ai protagonisti del Festival di Salisburgo durante il festival stesso. Ha scritto diversi libri, l'ultimo che a me piace molto, credo sia un'idea molto interessante, e poi testo ricchissimo di aneddoti, anche di intuizione di carattere psicologico, si intitola Children of Monsters ed è un libro sui figli dei dittatori, da Svetlana Stalin alla discussa mai ovviamente accettata progenie di Adolf Hitler, ovviamente in Italia, a quella invece di costruire anche nelle generazioni successive. Noi stessi in qualche maniera pensiamo. Il titolo di oggi è un po' ambiguo, un po' ermetico, per colpa mia, ed è La torre d'avorio e i deplorevoli. L'America sta davvero andando a pezzi. Mettendo assieme queste due cose, cioè la torre d'avorio, l'intellettualismo dell'accademia, il politicamente corretto delle università americane da una parte, e dall'altra i deplorevoli, no? Questa espressione utilizzata da Hillary Clinton per riferirsi a alcuni pezzi dell'elettorato di Donald Trump, che sicuramente non ha portato fortuna nel suo uso, abbiamo cercato insomma di chiedere a Jay di riflettere assieme con noi ad alcune tendenze, oggetto anche di studi, di lavori importanti negli ultimi anni, penso a Coming Apart di Charles Murray, su quello che sta succedendo sulla crescente o no, chi lo sa, polarizzazione della società, in effetti, che produce nel quadro. Io con questo mi taccio e ringraziandolo molto per esserci venuti a fare, ma anche qui abbiamo un vincolo dietro abbastanza stretto, dobbiamo accompagnarlo alla stazione di Cadorna perché vada a prendere il suo aereo per New York, ci deve fare piacere.
Wonderful. I think that's the extent of my Italian this morning. So a quick change of language. Thank you for coming. I'm delighted to be here. The first President Bush, number 41, said that America had 1,000 points of light, by which he meant voluntary organizations, civil society. So the Bruno Leoni Institute is, in my mind, a point of light. And I'm so glad you exist. I consider this institute almost a miracle. And I say the more liberalism, the better. So I feel that I'm in a kind of Italian home. Alberto said, "What would you like to talk about on Monday morning?" And I said, "I don't know. What would you like me to talk about?" And he said, "How about the U.S. campus presidency? How things are going?" So I've jotted some notes. And if anything is unclear or you'd like to make a point, let me know. And I'm going to glance at my notes and give you what I think are some salient points. Now, obviously, it's natural for the right, at least in America. It's natural for conservatives and classical liberals to complain about academia, to complain about the U.S. campus. We've been doing it for generations. I think with reason. I went to college in the 1980s, in the early and mid-1980s, during the time of Reagan, and I thought the atmosphere on campus was toxic. It was heavily left. It was strongly Marxist. There was very little toleration, diversity of thought. Minority points of view tended to be squeezed out. But I would say that the people weren't exactly crazy. They were left-wing, they were ideological, they were intolerant. But I think what may be somewhat new is a streak of insanity on American campuses. People, the students and faculty, are obsessed with identity, matters of identity politics. They're obsessed with race, ethnicity, and what we call gender. We used to say sex. The new word is gender. Now, I don't know what Italian campuses are like, but every now and then, when I'm tempted to think that my conservative friends who know about academia are exaggerating, I visit a campus, I have an encounter with a campus, and I think, my God, these people are nuts. And then I go away and go about my work, and then I forget about it for a while. I've had some recent experiences on campus, which I'll tell you about. But I think I can say, I know this from the testimony of professors, that there are many professors who are afraid of their students, who are afraid of saying a wrong thing in class that could get them reported and get them in trouble. And it is really a lousy situation when the adults, so to speak, are afraid of the children. I don't want to make a grotesque analogy, but when I saw a film from Yale University of students screaming at a scared administrator, I really did think of the Cultural Revolution in China, where the adults, with good reason, were terrified of the kids. Now, obviously, the faculty administrators are not going to be imprisoned, tortured, or killed. That's why it's a grotesque analogy. But they may lose their jobs. And there was a couple, a husband and wife at Yale, who decided they had to leave their positions because they said that students shouldn't make such a big deal over Halloween costumes. And the students took such offense that this couple was forced out of the university. There is a small conservative-led free speech movement on U.S. campuses, which is ironic because the so-called free speech movement in the 1960s came from the left. But there are a great many people on U.S. campuses who think that free speech is somehow a right-wing trick or value, when it should in fact be a genuine liberal value. Now, there are plenty of conservative and libertarian groups devoted to freedom on campus and reform on campus, but I don't think they get very far. Sometimes people ask, how come there's so many conservative or classical liberal think tanks in America, and so few think tanks from the left? And the reason is they have no need in them. because they have colleges and universities. So why do they need a Bruno Leoni Institute? Instead, they have the University of California system, for example. A couple of years ago, I heard about something, and I went to visit Brown University in Providence, Rhode Island, which is one of our most prestigious institutions. And there, a couple of students have started a secret Facebook group. I didn't know there was such a thing as a secret Facebook group, but apparently there are 3 kinds of Facebook group: public, closed, and secret. And this group was set up so that students could discuss issues freely, including controversial. In other words, they had to take their conversation underground because it wasn't quite safe. It wasn't prudent to have it above ground. And these weren't right-wing students. These were students of every political stripe who simply enjoyed free conversation and free debate. And the rule was, on this Facebook group, you couldn't shout anyone down. You couldn't make anyone a pariah or an outcast. You had to be willing to engage in debate. This is the sort of thing that a lot of us in colleges ought to be for. And I found it highly significant that these students, and there were about 100, were forced to go underground. For some reason, many of the students on these campuses fancy themselves oppressed, fancy themselves victims. It's the strangest thing. They are among the luckiest, most privileged people on earth. Millions and hundreds of millions of people all around the world would give anything to trade places with them. But they regard themselves as victims. This is what some of us refer to as the grievance culture in America. And it is a very depressing and discouraging thing. A lot of students are taught that they are victims, that they are oppressed. And I say taught because they don't come out of a womb thinking these things. Someone has to plant these ideas in their head. And I often quote a song from the musical South Pacific by Oscar Hammerstein, words, and Richard Roberts, music. And Hammerstein has this lovely lyric about, it's a song about racism. And the song is, "You've got to be carefully taught." No one is born a racist. He becomes a racist through some kind of education. And these people, these young people, have been taught somehow that they are victims, which I consider tragic. But recently I was on a campus of Claremont University in California, Southern California. This is one of the most beautiful places you can imagine. It really is a kind of paradise. And these kids are so lucky to be in this most beautiful part of not only the United States, but the world. And on one of the most beautiful campuses I've ever seen. It's like a fairy kingdom. And these kids are filled with darkness, with thoughts of oppression and victimization, as though they live in some kind of gulag. I mean, these students are absolutely pezzi. These students. I gave a speech about politics on campus, and in my view, there should be less of it. College should be a time for learning and discovery and maturation. There's plenty of time for politics and political fighting later. Enjoy college. Get the most out of it. Read books. Go have a hamburger and a milkshake. What's all this obsession with politics? And when I was growing up, when I was coming of age, there was a slogan in America. The personal is the political. The personal is the political. And to me, this is indicative of an almost totalitarian mindset. There are no zones, there are no areas free of politics. Not music, not sports, not friendship, not anything. Everything is soaked with politics. And I said it doesn't need to be this way. And I thought I gave a completely uncontroversial talk. There was almost no conservatives. What's that word there? Conservatism in it. Almost none. There was certainly nothing right-wing. It was basically straight American liberalism, toleration, diversity, that sort of thing. But the kids didn't like it at all. And they insisted in the Q&A that everything had to be political, and it was naive and even oppressive to think, for example, that music could be a sphere free of partisan politics. And what really disquieted me is they spoke a language I didn't understand. Language, this gibberish, this nonsense language, words I'd never heard of. For example, there was one young woman who told me that I thought the way I do because of my positionality. Yes, and I think she meant because of my race and sex. And I think this way of thinking is tragic. These people, these young people, couldn't speak because they couldn't think. And they couldn't think because their minds were attacked, I would say, by these ridiculous ideas, this gibberish. It's not, they are victims in this sense. And I found that very disquieting because the Claremont kids should be the best and the brightest. And the week before I was there, the scholar Heather McDonald from the Manhattan Institute gave a talk about the police. And a howling large mob outside the hall prevented people from coming in to hear the talk. And so she gave her talk to only a few people who were in the hall already. And the hundreds more who wanted to hear her all blocked by a mob. You may have heard about an incident at Middlebury College. Again, one of our elite institutions in Vermont. Beautiful old place. And a famous seat for the study of foreign languages. Charles Murray, author of Coming Apart, was physically attacked by a mob. And the professor, the left-leaning professor of international relations, a woman who was accompanying him, had to go to the hospital. This is a mob attack at Middlebury College. And in the 1980s, during Reagan drug war days, there was a slogan. In fact, there was a film, a documentary called Scared Straight. And some of us are hoping that incidents like what happened at Middlebury will scare good liberals, by which I mean left-wing American liberals, straight into thinking, this is not who we are. We can't have mob attacks on our campuses. We can't have a prevention speech. In my view, no change will come from the right. I believe that change must come from the left. They must reform themselves. Because people like me, I think, are pretty much powerless in America to effect change, except through occasional shame. And people like me preach the old liberal values to them to try to remind them of what their roots are. Pluralism, for example. Doesn't seem to be working that well. Now, I hasten to say that, so don't let me exaggerate. I know there are great swaths of American universities, in the sciences, for example, where this political craziness does not go on. I trust that there are thousands and millions of students in America who have a basically harmonious, sane college life. I trust this is true. But I hear testimonies from the liberal arts that are really very, very disturbing, very unnerving. After I gave this talk at Claremont, which, let me stress, was a very innocent talk about liberal values, this young woman came up to me. She was waiting in line to talk. A lovely young woman, Asian American, who said that she was scared to be seen with me. She wanted to have a picture taken with me, but that would brand her as a right-wing, and it could give her extra trouble on campus. She was a conservative student, and she said she had to live in a kind of fear on campus. And she sent me a letter, an email, hours later, in the middle of the night, that I found infuriating and heartbreaking, about how she was a pariah on campus, because she was associated in some way with the right side, the conservative side of politics. And to think that a young woman like that would be shunned on an elite campus like Claremont, and that's just one person's experience, but I can't imagine it's all that uncommon. At the same time, I'm told that American colleges and universities are admired throughout the world. I trust that this is true. But there is this dark side. Another point I wanted to make has to do with the quality of education in the humanities. Yale University, one of our best institutions, its English department has removed, has removed its requirement that majors in English, those specializing in English, read the major English poets. Shakespeare, Milton, Donne, Keats, and the rest. No longer required. You can take it voluntarily, but you don't have to read those people in order to major, which is to say in order to specialize in English at Yale, which is screwy. So what to do? First of all, some people, some conservatives, including Kevin McDonald, have thrown in the towel. That means to quit. Their line is, if the American people wanted better, more balanced, less crazy campuses, we would have them. It's up to the people to demand it. All these conservative or conservative-leaning parents continue to write their checks for $200,000 or more for the 4 years of university, right? They won't vote with their feet. They won't vote with their dollars. So this is one point of view. Now, of course, there's building your own institutions, creating your own conservative or classical liberal institutions. So we have a college, I call it the conservative Harvard, in my home state of Michigan, called Hillsdale College. And I went there to give a talk once to meet the students. And I said, and there are plenty of left-leaning students, but not so many on the faculty. I said, if you're a conservative institution, what are the fights here? What do you have to argue about? Are you one happy family? Oh no. There are two major divisions on that campus. The less important one is conservatives versus libertarians. But the most important one is Catholics versus Protestants. And I thought, oh great, religious wars on campus, just what we need. The political wars aren't bad enough, religious wars. So there's that. And the other thing to do is to encourage enclaves, pockets, little islands of classical liberalism and conservative insanity on campus. A great books program, Western civilization. Why should that be conservative? To me, it's normal education, But I am on the board of a foundation of a dear friend of mine named Martha Apgar. It's called the Apgar Foundation. And we give little bits, minor bits of money to these programs and great books of Western civilization on campus. And I said, why should we have to do that? The colleges themselves should do it. But in order to have these programs, particular professors need outside funding. And I quote you another song lyric. This one is from The Music Man by Mary Wilson. And Mary the librarian is dreaming about what kind of man she wants to marry. And she says, if occasionally he pondered what makes Shakespeare and Beethoven great, him I would love till I die. And all my little foundation, our little foundation wants to do is have kids occasionally ponder what makes Shakespeare and Beethoven great. So if I had college-age children, I have no idea what I'd do with them. Now I was going to move on to the administration, but if we'd like to talk about colleges, let's talk about colleges.
Let me just ask you quick. Just again, what would be the tuition fee applied to college?
I don't know. My guess is $50,000 a year. Used to be a very good house.
Certainly a college for the underdogs.
Yeah.
Would you strike? I like just to be, when you're recharging with water, I'll do something I never thought of maybe happen, which is a reference to excellent New York Times op-ed. One was by David Brooks a couple of weeks ago. crisis of Western sea. And Brooks dealt over there precisely with this fact, and he pointed out, you know, one major problem of Western civilization is that we spent the last 20 years in colleges saying how dreadful it is. And you leave that somehow with the rise of populism in some countries. That's what people did. What you get as established features of Western civilization is something we better do without. Another thing is, instead, was just published today. It's an article by Molly Warder, who's an assistant professor of history at the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. And it's the title is "You Can Talk to Your Professor Like This." And actually, what she does in this op-ed today is supporting etiquette instructions that professors feel compelled to give to their students. And she points out how actually this climate of total informality in which you address your history professor like Joe and your English professor as Susan, and send them, you know, text messages in which you substitute K for CH and this stuff, is actually threatening in a good atmosphere for learning and discussing and developing ideas and encounters. These were my intermission.
Do you in Italy have this problem of pronouns? What pronouns to use? In America, they say, "What are your pronouns?" And I say, "Excuse me." So I would like to be referred to as him and his. But you may make up different words for your pronouns to fit your idea of your identity. So in other words, I may insist that when you talk about me, you say them, or a made up word like turd or something. And honestly, kids on campus, when they arrive, are asked, "What pronouns do you prefer?" Now, I regard this as not merely politically correct. I regard it as a kind of insanity. And I hope it's a fad. I hope it's something that will pass. But it's a real concern. At first, I thought this was a joke, or maybe occurring in extreme left-wing places like Bennington College, or Reed College, or Oberlin College in Ohio. But no, it has gone mainstream. At Claremont, for example, the kids are made to say what pronouns they prefer. So this we did not have when I was in college. Women were her and hers, men were him and his, and it was perfectly normal. So this doesn't exist here?
No.
Have you heard of this? I know it seems extraterrestrial. It seems like something from another planet. But it is a very hot and contentious topic in America. 2 years ago, or 3 years ago, my editor said to me, "Jay, do a piece on this pronouns craze on campus." I thought it was like a joke, but I looked into it. It's not a joke. And even some parents are adapting and referring to their children by these pronouns that are completely bizarre. You don't know whether to laugh or cry. Okay, I move on to politics, speaking of laughing and crying. So, all of my life, I've heard this is the most toxic and divided era we've ever had in American politics. It's always the worst. The Reagan years were very, very bad, with a lot of ill feeling and animosity in America. Same with the 8 years of George W. Bush. The Obama years were turbulent. But I don't know that we've ever had anything like the present. And this administration has been in power only since January 20th. It hasn't been that long. Honestly, it feels like 10 years. So for the 8 years of Obama, I would often ask people, smart people, political scientists, philosophers, what is Obama? Is he a traditional American liberal? Is he a European-style social democrat? Is he a socialist? Is he a red? Is he a little bit pink? what is Obama? And I got interesting answers. And the question arises now, what is Donald Trump? I think mainly he is a celebrity. He's a creature of television. My view is that all of his instincts are authoritarian, that there's no liberalism, there isn't a liberal spirit in him, that the American system constrains him. The election of 2016 was an extraordinary moment. It was what we call a perfect storm. A perfect, what's the Marxist phrase? Coming together of circumstances, correlation of forces for Donald Trump. He was a response to immense frustration on the right with the 8 years of Obama, political correctness, the perception in middle America that the Republican Party was weak and would not fight, and was constantly capitulating or giving in to left. And here at last, people thought, in Donald Trump, was a man tough enough to do what is necessary. And to the extent he had a worldview or a point of view, he spoke the language of populism and nationalism and protectionism and isolationism and some nativism. As George W. Bush said during the campaign, all these bad isms. Also Buchananism. He spoke the language of Pat Buchanan, a decade or three earlier, who represented the populist and nationalist right, anti-free market, for example, skeptical of liberal democracy. During this last campaign, Buchanan said that the nationalist and populist right was struggling against the niceties, his word, of liberal democracy to save the country they love. And Buchanan was interviewed recently. I didn't make it. In other words, I was never elected president. But my ideas made it, Buchanan said. During the Republican primary campaign, there were 17 candidates. And Trump, the eventual winner, was the only one who said that he would not reform entitlements, Social Security, Medicare, that sort of thing, which had put us on a course of financial doom down the road at some point. He was the only one who wouldn't touch that. He said, no, what we need to do is ferret out waste, fraud, and abuse in government. And the savings will enable us to shore up, to save Social Security and Medicare. This is the exact kind of thing I heard from the Democratic Party in the 1980s. It's what Michael Dukakis said when he ran in 1988. And when Senator Ted Cruz of Texas proposed a conservative or classical liberal healthcare reform plan, Trump said it was heartless and would leave people dying in the streets. Just the kind of thing we heard from the left. Trump was able to exploit great discontent, and I think legitimate discontent, with illegal immigration. He stoked grievances. He blamed people's problems on foreigners. America was a loser in trade. America was a patsy. America was a victim in trade. Being beaten up by the rest of the world. And it's funny, when you speak to the rest of the world, they tend to regard America as a giant. When you hear Donald Trump talk, he often portrays America as a whipping boy, as a victim. And it was very successful politically, certainly within the Republican Party. He used an old discredited slogan, America First, which when I was growing up always had an odor about it because it smelled of isolationism and nativism and chauvinism. He decried what he called globalism, which was never defined. But you always got a sense that what Trump was saying is you're being screwed by foreigners and by their allies at Goldman Sachs, and so on. So Trump was elected, and I think President Obama had the most astute short analysis of the election. He said Trump won because people were frustrated with economic stagnation. Their wages weren't rising or they couldn't find work. And they had the sense that they were being looked down on by elites. I think this is exactly right. And Trump won in the Electoral College and lost the popular vote. 2012, when he thought that Obama might win in the Electoral College but lose the popular vote, he tweeted the Electoral College is a disaster for democracy. But he liked it better 4 years later. This is a very controversial issue in America, the Electoral College. So obviously the country is divided, but so is the right. On my side of things, there's a kind of civil war. We are schismatic, and it's very, very painful. Alliances are strained or broken. Friendships are strained or broken. I even know of marriages in which there is great tension because of Donald Trump. This man, this phenomenon, has gotten under the skin, has rattled the brains of great many Americans. It's tragic on my side to see long-standing alliances and friendships either strained or broken. There are people who aren't speaking to each other. Many conservatives, such as the famous writer and philosopher George Will, have left the Republican Party. And a lot of people on the right have turned on a dime. You know that expression? A little dime, a 10-cent piece in America? Turn on a dime. It means to turn very, very quickly, to throw away your old beliefs and values and embrace new ones. And this has been very, very frustrating. So, as I see it, there's a great gap between people who think that Donald Trump is fit to be president and people who don't. And there's simply no bridging that gap. Here's a subject I've been exploring a lot lately with people who follow these things, and I think it may be of particular interest to the Bruno Leoni Institute. So for a long time, people like me in National Review have advocated Reaganite American conservatism. Free markets, trade, alliances, personal responsibility, engagement in the world, limited government, small government, etc. Equality under the law, rule of law, etc. The people really aren't buying what we're selling. Someone I know who is a major financier, philanthropist, former chairman of the American Enterprise Institute, expressed these ideas to me that we've been trying to instill a certain ethical philosophy in America. And the people aren't buying it. And maybe they will later. There are cycles in politics. There are certain cycles in American politics. But the language of big government and protection works electorally, succeeds electorally. I was recalling earlier a conversation on television that Bill Buckley had with Gene Kirkpatrick, the late political scientist and U.S. ambassador to the United Nations. I also recall a conversation he had with Vernon Walters, our late great diplomat, who was also an ambassador to the United Nations, deputy director of the CIA. But Buckley said to Kirkpatrick, how can you explain the success of socialist or statist politicians in free countries? And she said, their language is better than ours. They have words like fairness, equality, solidarity, community. We're all together. We have words like free enterprise, self-reliance, risk reward. And these are very, very frightening to people. Very frightening. And I do think she was onto something. And I saw it in this last Republican primary campaign. I saw the electoral loss of Mitt Romney in 2012 and the triumph of Donald Trump in 2016. And what he did was marry, what was unite some conservative social beliefs, anti-immigration, for example, with statism and a protective government. He said, using the language of a demagogue, he said, I'm the only one who can do this. Only I can accomplish what you need, and I'm going to make your every dream of the last 50 years come true. And this is very, very seductive. I also want to say a word about the media. This contributes to the division of the United States, or after having been. These are watched as anything in common anymore. And I think the breakup of a kind of journalistic monopoly, although it was never really a monopoly, is a good thing. Let 100 flowers bloom. Let 1,000 flowers bloom. It used to be in America, we had 3 television networks, CBS, NBC, ABC, and then public television, where Bill Buckley was, PBS. And we had the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Chicago Tribune, the Los Angeles Times, the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, and other smaller newspapers influenced by it. We all basically read and heard the same stuff. Not that this was good, but we did. Now, everyone reads and watches his own media. Everyone is the curator of his own media. So, right-wingers have their own websites and television network. Same with left-wingers. And so there's no agreement on facts. And when you say something in an argument, often another person will say, where are you getting that? I never heard that. So it's very hard to have a discussion of opinion when there isn't agreement on facts. And I can tell you that on the right, there's a great deal of distrust of mainstream media or establishment media. And a lot of this distrust is earned. But not often, if I speak to a conservative audience and cite something from the Washington Post or the New York Times, people say, no, that's fake news. And they hear this from the president. And so this adds a bit of poison into our political culture. It used to be that National Review was scorned by many people on the left and even in the middle as a far-out, extreme, right-wing rag. Now we are denounced by the right as the establishment. It's a very strange turn of events. It used to be we were a bad boy outsider. Now National Review is seen by much of the right as establishment. And the sexy magazine is Breitbart, which is propagandistic and extreme. So, obviously from my point of view, I'm a bold Republican. A great deal of good will come out of any Republican administration. Almost by accident. You can't help it. Tax reform. Good judges, right? Some restraint. I believe we need a reformed military and greater spending. There's an argument over that. President Trump wants to spend $1 trillion on infrastructure. To some of us, this is like Obama's stimulus program. But obviously great good can come out of an administration. And some of the people I admire most are in this administration. Pezzi, who is one of the great advocates of school reform and school choice and helping poor kids in America. And she is a hate figure on the left. And I consider her a heroine. So, from my point of view, great good can come out of this administration. The question is, will democratic norms be preserved? How dangerous is Trump? Is he dangerous at all? Is he just an entertainer? Does he just have a clownish aspect? Is he Hugo Chavez, a populist, an insult artist, an entertainer, a charismatic figure with a great devoted following? I think all these things are to be seen. I think the Trump presidency is kind of like a reality TV show, which is the kind of thing he used to do. And he demands constant presence, constant attention. A lot of us on the right side of politics in America thought that the presidency was too big a deal in American life anyway. Too much attention. He's not a king. He's a Republican officer with a small R. Why should the United States, this great, vast country, from sea to shining sea, as Bill Buckley used to say, this vast continental country, why should it be like a giant television show with one man as the star? And we criticized Obama for this. Trump is like this 10 times more, 50 times more. So I think we should have a discussion now, but the last thing I'll say is, I must say I'm sort of impressed with the American system. Just as we were all taught, people like me, American kids were all taught in school, depending on where we went to school. But the American system is working. Checks and balances, separation of powers, restraint on the executive, civil society, a free press. It is all working. I said before, but not you. Donald Trump doesn't have a Democratic or liberal bone in his body. But it doesn't quite matter. Because the system will have, and will have regular elections. And I do hope the good that, from my point of view, can and already has come out of this administration will outweigh the bad. So I think I'll shut up now and listen to you. And so thank you very much.
Too long? Perfect. Questions, comments?
Criticism, objections? Nobody say corrections?
Right, different what
Yes.
except the word scares people. Perhaps due to the fact that the profession makes change in America in the last 30, 40 years.
I attribute it to education.
The less education.
The wrong kind of education. It used to be that freedom was a powerful word in America, and of course it still is. But I agree with the argument of Dinesh D'Souza, who says fairness will win against freedom every time. Appeals to fairness are very powerful. Appeals to freedom, they put people off. What do little kids, I don't know about it, I can buy it from her. What do little kids say as soon as they talk? That's not fair. That's not fair. You don't hear much about freedom. And people like me have long believed the American ethic is we all rise together. I don't resent my neighbor's success. I'm happy for my neighbor's success. And I will rise too. Because an atmosphere of freedom, an atmosphere of order and liberty benefits us all. One thing that worries me a lot is that the resentment and envy, the resentment of success and envy of success that I always found on the left, that's one of the reasons I became a conservative. I was pushed into the arms from the right when I was a teenager in my early 20s. This same resentment and envy that I recoiled from on the left is now in my home on the right. What are the charges hurled against me constantly? Jay, you are an elitist. You are a member of the elite. And I would say to them, sir, your candidate, your man, lives in a tower named after himself, at the top of it. And he literally sits on a gold toilet. This is not a metaphor. He literally sits on a gold toilet. Do you understand I am a magazine stuffer? Does no good. Does no good. And I must say, I'm slightly ashamed of myself. Because for years, I spoke about the attitude of the elites condescending to or insulting the common man. I think I was right. I know I was right. Because people around. And to hear these same charges hurled at good conservatives is a very strange experience. Very strange. Republicans nominated exploit this resentment. Those fancy people with their fancy words and fancy plans about the free market, the supply side, the American Enterprise Institute, and Hayek and Friedman, no. No. These are just words meant to keep you down. And they're selling your jobs to Mexico and China. And this was very, very potent. And one thing the Trump people say is definitely true. He brought new people to the polls, people who had not voted for him. And these are not free market figures. Trust me, they're not free market figures at all. Remind me of my late friend Cable Burns said, many of our voters, by which she meant conservative voters, are redistributionists at heart. And this came up in this context. For a lot of people, especially libertarians, who have long said for 30 years, the abortion issue and the other social issues are a drag on the Republican Party. Get rid of it. And Kate would say a lot of people are in the Republican Party because of those issues. They're at heart redistributionists or social democrats. They're not in it for the University of Chicago or the Austrian school. They're in it for the social issues. And I've seen this proven, I think, in electoral politics. Does that make sense?
Yeah, just to say, I'd just like to say, you know, comparatively, sort of sentiment and envy and spies of success you detect in American society now should not blind us to the fact that it is comparatively smaller than the US as compared with your average. So, you know, it's.
So you say don't complain.
No, I'm not saying don't complain. I say watch out. But you know, attitudes towards business, which is very interesting. People believe that you know, pursuing your life career in enterprise is something noble or not. In the US, it's really much better from our point of view that it's just like to get in France or Germany, perhaps, even. So that is one thing, and the second thing, I suppose that, you know, my gut feeling would be that there is a very strong link between your first argument and your second one, between these people being carefully taught to despise Western civilization and deplorables, quote unquote, I think, you know, for example, the situation of the American campus and the impression, perhaps of course wrong, that many families may have the brainwashing of their kids, because suddenly turning them into people more sympathetic to Trump. Or the fact that people, you know, average, non-intellectual, common man, they you know, have this feeling that academic discussions are completely remote from reality, and they involve matters very little influence the, you know, real world. I think it's something that also propels this anti-elitist sentiment.
Let me tell you a happy story.
Eventually, when it changes.
A couple of weeks ago, I was in Anaheim, California, the site of Disneyland. And I was covering a conference, been writing about it, a huge conference of high school students, 16,000 high school students who belong to an organization called DECA. They're all wearing blue blazers, so people would look alike, no distinction between rich and poor. And they were participating in business competitions. They're part of a group where you learn the fundamentals of business, entrepreneurship, and prepare for the work world. And a lot of these kids come from less well-off families. A great many of them were Hispanic and Black, and especially South Asian. And they were also as American as apple pie, although I noticed that apple pie is a Milanese dessert too. We say American is apple pie. And so that's another slice of America. The problem with talking about America is the country is so big and diverse, almost everything is true. It depends on what you want to concentrate on. What I said about Brown University and its atmosphere of oppression and the secret Facebook group, that's true. But the DECA conference with the kids in blue blazers who made my heart sing, that's true too. So this is an old American expression. There's a lot of life in the old gal yet. There's a lot of life in America. It's absolutely true. And I wouldn't want to trade places. So don't let me be too whiny. But it's still true that we never had, if this language is wrong, this concept is wrong. But we've never had, at least very successfully, what I would call European-style conservatism in America. Blood and soil conservatism. Our conservatism has been liberalism, has been Reaganism. And now we see something different. But maybe it's passing. That's what you're right.
Well, I'm happy to hear from you that you trust that there are religious equalized forces that therefore all will go well. But I see real dangers. Trade wars, real wars, not only real losses of power, like in the Pacific. The growing of the US debt, which is, we'll see that in the subprime crisis. And above all, the fear that the fabulous dynamism of the US society, US, what you say, there is life, that this spirit might somehow not be destroyed, but working less well. We all build a better mousetrap. You say that the checks and balances in the US, and in the US there are balancing powers, but they may help avoid disaster, but they are not alone. There are balancing powers outside. Are there checks because you are not allowed alone in the world. What you do, and the other part of the world is quite big and quite powerful. So that's what we're here.
You remember this expression, Alberto? That when America sneezes, the world catches a cold. Yes. Well, it's a great concern. Let me take some of these individually. The matter of the debt and other looming financial crises. You know this old expression, probably in Italian too. No one wants to repair the roof when the sun is shining. It has to be stormy. Then they scramble up and repair the roof, and let's hope it's not too late. George W. Bush, bless his heart, campaigned on Social Security reform in 2000. Very brave. It was called the third rail of American politics. That means if you touch it, you'll be electrocuted. He did it again in 2004. And then at the beginning of his second term, made a real push to reform Social Security. No one helped him, even the conservatives. He got nowhere. And I think it's because the crisis is not upon the people. And the people will at last be roused, awoken to act when the crisis is upon them. Because when people like me issue warnings, when people like you issue warnings, a great many voters say, later, maybe, it's okay. And of course, we're a democracy. And politicians don't get anywhere when they promise necessary reform. Politicians succeed when they promise ongoing candy. Every day is Christmas, and these guys get elected. Now, Mitt Romney was someone who issued severe warnings about what was coming, and he didn't make it. So that's a concern. As far as trade and alliances go, now the president has great power, especially in a foreign realm. But Congress has power too in the area of trade. And I believe that the Republican Party will restrain Trump. I think he will find anti-trade allies in the Democratic Party. I remember when the Democrats were running in the 1980s, Japan was the great bogeyman. And I remember the Dukakis-Benson ticket in 1988 ran a television ad with a rising sun that we were all going to be owned by the Japanese. And then 2 seconds later, Japan was no concern. Was our concern? I think Trump's judgment is suspect, to say the least. I must give him credit for surrounding himself in key positions with very sane, experienced, capable people. I also think that he's changing his mind about NATO. He had the wrong idea of NATO. He admitted he knew nothing about it. As he put it, when you're trying to build a building in Manhattan, no one asks you about NATO. So I didn't know what to say when he said that NATO was obsolete. I think he understands better now. And the defense secretary and the national security advisor certainly understand the importance of NATO.
As long as he doesn't fire them.
A Trump presidency will be a wild ride. It will be a wild ride. It's true. And sitting here today, I make no guarantees that he will finish his term, and I make no guarantees that he won't be reelected. American politics is a fickle thing, and he has a core of support that will never leave him. As he himself said, he could go out in the middle of Fifth Avenue, Trump powers on Fifth Avenue, go out in the middle of Fifth Avenue, shoot someone, and not lose any support. I think this is true of his core, but he won last time with 46% of the vote. And so 2020 will be interesting. And by the way, this is a cliche, but like many cliches, it's true. Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton were so lucky in the opponent they had. I think there was no one else Hillary could have beaten but Trump. And no one else whom Trump could have beaten but Hillary. So this is the expression. It's funny, I happen to know the author of this book. He's a friend of mine. He's very successful, right? But we have this book called Perfect Storm. I don't know if that ever made it. It's made into a movie. So now it's become an idiom, a phrase, meaning a coming together of circumstances so freaky it won't happen again. I believe that's what 2016 was like. And I know we have to go soon. But could I hear some of you, if you don't mind, asking a question? I know I've asked Alberto. I don't know if I've asked Bruno, but I'd like to hear from anybody. Could you explain to me the major differences between Silvio and Donald? Because people in America like to compare them. Anybody? Franco?
If I did before. One was a truly successful businessman. The other not so much. And one thing when it comes to this political conversation, which is an issue you've been digging around, this problem with all this lack of judgment as prime minister, this failure and tempting reforms of the case. But the thing always problems. One was never portraying these on borders as something that needed to be rescued from dire straits. I mean, Berlusconi was sending a very positive message to people. I mean, at the end of the day, he was telling them, you Italians are no worse than anybody else in the world, and you just need a proper set of circumstances to flourish, to get richer, and I've been so good at getting rich myself out of scratch, and I will be able to envision a secular scenario in which all of you will be able to say. This is, I think, our biggest problem, is that this one is shut down, but clearly our former Prime Minister, Mr. Renzi, cannot stop the rise from the 5-star movement with just electorally possible according to all the polls. So it's useless for that need. And surprisingly, the only body that could do this is, this bizarre thing, which is the old Berlusconi. It's at least down there with the movement. Because the movement is one single party. Berlusconi said the party is 3 or 4, depending on how you make it count. But the biggest problem is that if you want to stop the price movement, you will have to run a very negative election. You will have to lecture people every day of the potential dangers of leaving the euro. You will have to remind people of the disaster of 2011, when we were really on the edge of failure. You will have to lecture people on danger, not to sell them a wonderful optimistic picture, which is not available, unfortunately, in the immediate future of this time. And the biggest problem is that Berlusconi is unfit to do that. He never ran a negative. He never promised gloom and doom. This is partially true. In 2006, he succeeded in campaigning against Romano Prodi, as if Romano Prodi was the incumbent and Berlusconi was the challenger on one single issue, it was taxes. But he's very unable to do that because it's outside of his own nature. Berlusconi is a seven. He wants you to be happy and go out and buy the new fridge, get a new smartphone, smile, spend your money. That's what he really wants you to do. And instead, to stop the populist wave in Italy, you have somebody that tends to down in, country of savers, country of homeowners. You have plenty of things to lose if you go down that way. And this is a message Mr. Berlusconi is not to act.
I've quoted Franco de Benedetti to many people about Berlusconi. He did 2 things. He broke the state monopoly on television, and he existed. What a wonderful phrase. He existed.
I wanted to ask, how many high-rise buildings do you have in Manhattan? Donald Trump just did another one. We had one television, and Berlusconi gave us a second one and a completely different way of depicting life. Bruno Bianco and things. He had color. So that's how the main difference.
Would you ever see a similarity between Trump and the very old world, the 60s?
Yeah, I think they are as different as a fish and a giraffe. Completely different. And Barry Goldwater was a real thinking libertarian.
Because I remember the campaign against the globals.
Who was a fish?
Vicious. Right, yeah. Oh, that they have. Yeah. Hatred by the media. Yeah. That's for sure. Yeah. But Goldwater was a genuine libertarian, small state man. There's none of that in Trump. None of it. His idea is a great paternalistic government that will protect his people. And he would be the pocket communist.
And about remembering the management of crisis by Donald Trump, to me recalls John Foster Dulles. You remember John Foster Dulles was Secretary of State of Eisenhower. And when they won the elections, he said, we will roll them back about Russians from Eastern Europe. And he also threatened Korea with a possible use of atomic bombing. By the way, MacArthur was, that was the plan of MacArthur. So the basic idea was to dramatize the crisis until you arrive to a nuclear confrontation, just nuclear confrontation, not nuclear war. At that point, the Soviet Union should give up in event because US was stronger, they had the possibility of bombing the USSR, when the USSR had not really the possibility of bombing in the 50s. There is something of that in the Korean strategy of Trump. I don't know. Your opinion, maybe I am completely wrong.
No, you're not. My guess is that Dulles thought about these things, and so did his brother, who was director of the CIA.
Yeah.
And I think Trump improvises.
Mm.
I think he is spontaneous and emotional. But North Korea is a very thorny problem. And I'll be a little bit, I once heard a very high source in the Oval Office say, if you think there are good military options in North Korea, you don't know the military options. That's the whole point of preemption. When a regime goes nuclear, your options are severely limited. So the US is in this rather pitiful position of leaning on the Chinese over and over again to do something to restrain the Kim dictatorship.
Mm.
And by the way, can I just say, this is related, I know we have to go, but how impressed I am with South Korea and democracy and our ideas. I ask you to consider something. South Koreans freely elected a woman president.
Exactly.
Free and democratic election. A woman became president of South Korea. A democratically elected legislature impeached her. A legitimate constitutional court upheld the legislature's action. And she went. She left office. Now, in our countries, this is normal and expected. But in East Asia, and contrast it with North Korea, if that's not proof that politics matter, I don't know what is. The contrast between South Korea and North Korea, even starker in East Germany and West Germany, it's such that woman's the success of democracy in South Korea, I think, is one of the most gladdening stories in the world, and it does prove that, if I may, that our ideas are not confined to one particular part of the globe, but they do apply to others. So that's a platitude, but you will mind the platitude now and then.
It's a conflicting one, so it's
We only have one problem, they eat too much coffee.
In South Korea, too much kimchi. So,
I think Venezuela doesn't like to be associated or likened to Trump at all. I think he believes he's more sophisticated. We have another guy called the torre. He had, endorsed second point, I think so the personalities are very similar. Same perhaps almost self-made man, optimist, and all that. But I think that at the end of the day, the main difference is in the political system. What Trump can achieve, like reform Obamacare, although it's challenging the Republicans, is not something that the Republicans could achieve here, because we have very difficult way of passing reform.
Mr. Direttore was Donald Trump, the Italian version of the American. So really, they are.
When I was a student here, I read all the time about Pezzi and Andreotti and Sandro Bertini and all these great figures. That's my era. I might put it that way, but that is my era. And I must say, because I'm getting a little nostalgic, was there a judge named Falcone who was murdered?
Yes.
I'll never forget. And anyway, I was here in the summer of 1984 for 3 months. And it was one of the happiest and most fulfilling times of my whole life. So I won't be too nostalgic. Thanks for having me.
you mentioned South Korea, but Taiwan, probably not so bad. Thailand.